You got the raise. 3 weeks later, nothing felt different. The number changed. The unease didn't. That's not a budgeting problem. It's a brain problem. And once you understand why, the feeling finally starts to make sense. The mainstream story about money and well-being is intuitive, and it's not entirely wrong. More income means more options. It means you can cover emergencies, reduce debt, stop choosing between things you need. The logic is clean. Financial stress comes from financial scarcity, so eliminating scarcity should eliminate the stress. This is how most people think about their financial lives, as a resource problem with a resource solution. Save more, earn more, reach the number, feel better. And at the extreme ends, this logic holds. People living in genuine material deprivation, unable to meet basic needs, do report significantly lower well-being. That part of the curve is real. The research is consistent on this, so the popular belief isn't fabricated, it's an extrapolation. People look at the bottom of the income distribution and assume the pattern continues all the way up. More is always better. The ceiling is just higher than you've reached yet. But something strange happens in the data when you follow people over time. Something the linear model doesn't predict. Something that most financial advice quietly ignores because it's inconvenient. The feeling of financial security tends not to track income the way the simple model says it should. And once you see why, you can't quite unsee it. Here is where the story gets more complicated and more honest. In 2003, an economist published a careful analysis of happiness data collected across decades and dozens of countries. The finding, now widely cited, was that as national income rose over time, average happiness scores did not rise with it in the way the simple model predicted. People were earning more in real terms than their parents had. Standards of living were objectively higher, and yet the reported sense of well-being, the felt experience of life, had barely moved. This has become known as the Easterlin Paradox. But here's the part that often gets flattened in popular retellings. The paradox isn't saying money doesn't matter. A later careful analysis of data from multiple countries found real associations between rising income and rising well-being, particularly when comparing across nations and when basic needs are genuinely being met. So the relationship between money and well-being is real. It's just not linear, and it's not stable. What seems to happen instead is this. The reference point moves. The brain doesn't evaluate your financial situation in absolute terms. It evaluates it relative to what you expected, what you had before, and, critically, what the people around you have now. When income rises gradually, the internal benchmark rises with it. The sense of enough recalibrates. What felt like abundance at one income level begins to feel like adequacy, then baseline, then barely sufficient. Neuroscientists call part of this hedonic adaptation. Behavioral economists call it the reference point problem. The mechanism has different names in different fields, but the experience is the same one you already know. The gap between what you have and what you feel you should have doesn't shrink with income, it migrates. Let's be specific about what the evidence actually shows and where it runs out. The 2003 analysis tracked income and self-reported well-being over long periods in the United States, Japan, and several European countries. The core observation was that despite sustained economic growth, average life satisfaction scores showed little sustained upward movement. The researchers' interpretation was that social comparison and rising aspirations continuously offset the gains from higher income. A researcher at a desk surrounded by survey data sheets, archival, quiet, unhurries, published in 2013, examined data from a much larger set of countries and found something more nuanced. Across nations, higher income was associated with higher well-being, suggesting that absolute income does matter when the comparison is wide enough. But within a given country, over time, the relationship weakened considerably. The authors were careful not to claim this resolved the original paradox. They were measuring different things, using different comparisons. The honest read is that both findings are probably capturing something real, just different parts of a complex system. Fluff. What this does not prove is that earning more is pointless. That would be a misreading. The evidence suggests that after basic material needs are genuinely met, the psychological return on additional income diminishes, and the diminishment happens faster than most people expect because the internal standard adjusts. Now add another layer. Research on financial stress in clinical populations, people managing serious illness alongside significant medical costs, has found something striking. The psychological weight of financial strain doesn't operate simply as a function of how much money is actually owed or lost. It operates as a function of perceived threat, perceived loss of control, and the disruption of a financial identity the person held about themselves. The stress is partly cognitive. It's about the story, not just the spreadsheet. Unease the K, a hospital waiting room, paperwork on their lap, looking at a distant point. This matters for ordinary financial life too. The brain running a quiet background calculation of financial threat is not running an objective accounting. It is running a comparison between where you are and where you believe you should be, between your current situation and the one your social environment implies is normal. That calculation is vulnerable to all the usual distortions of human cognition, and it runs continuously, mostly below conscious awareness. The research does not tell us exactly where the threshold is, the point at which more income stops translating into meaningfully less financial anxiety. That threshold probably differs across individuals, contexts, and cultures. What the evidence consistently suggests is that the threshold is lower than most people assume, and that the goalposts are not fixed. So what does this mean for you, specifically? It means the feeling that you're not quite there yet, that you'll feel settled once the income hits the next level, may not be a signal about your actual financial situation. It may be a signal about your reference point. And reference points move, a horizon line over flat water. This is where the Buddhist concept of upadana becomes quietly useful, not as a spiritual prescription, but as a description of something that actually happens. We cling to a financial identity long after the original conditions that created it have passed. Someone who genuinely struggled at one point in their life can carry that sense of precarity forward, even as the material circumstances change substantially. The label outlives the reality. The brain keeps running the old threat calculation on new data, and there's a Taoist version of this too. The harder you fight the feeling of financial insecurity, the more you push against it, override it with earning, silence it with spending, the more energy it consumes. Understanding the current is different from fighting it. If the anxiety isn't primarily about the money, then more money is not primarily the solution. None of this means your financial goals don't matter, or that earning more is irrational. It means the internal experience of financial security may require a different kind of attention than the income column does. The mechanism is psychological. The intervention, if there is one, probably has to be too. Here's the tension I can't fully resolve. The evidence is clear enough that the simple model, earn more, feel better, indefinitely, is incomplete. The reference point moves. The adaptation is real, but the research also shows that material conditions genuinely do affect well-being, particularly for people still navigating real scarcity. There's no clean line between this is a cognitive distortion and this is a legitimate material problem, and I'm not sure it's possible, or even honest, to simply decide which one you're dealing with from the inside. What I keep returning to is this. If the feeling of financial unease is persistent, if it survives the raise, survives the promotion, survives the paid-off debt, then it's probably worth asking what exactly it's measuring, because it may not be measuring what you think it is. The research behind this video draws from transplantation and cellular therapy, International Journal of Nursing Studies, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America, International Journal of Rheumatic Diseases, Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. Every claim traces to a published source. Full citations are in the description below. If the way this channel thinks about neuroscience resonates with you, subscribing helps this work reach people who'd appreciate it. New videos on the science of mind every week.